With January in the rearview mirror now, I'm so excited to sit down and talk books with you. We'll have a look at my January reading stats together, make some updates to my book club and series tracker and yearly tracker pages, set up some very space-aged pages for my February trackers, and I'll tell you all about the books I read in January and whether or not I think they might be worth your time too. Hi, I'm Erin, and I've had this reading journal set up for a few months now, so I'm really excited to finally start to use some of the trackers at the beginning of the journal, especially the one that's just a record of every book that I finish in the year. I don't really have a title for this one, but I've moved to book covers instead of just a written list this year, and I think it's going to look so impactful when it's done, so let's get the book covers down for the 4 books I read in January right here. We'll set up review pages for each of these books later on in the video, so stay tuned if you want to know what I thought of any of them. And I'm very proud that I can already fill out one of the spaces on my series tracker as well. This one is for Oathbound, which is the 3rd book in the Legendborn Cycle series. It seems like there'll be a 4th one coming, but it doesn't have a title yet or anything or a release date, so that means I'm up to date with that series. Next up is my January reading dashboard, and I'm going to add my start and end dates to my progress calendar here. Funnily enough, the book covers that I put down the bottom there in my January read section as kind of like a hopeful, maybe this is my January TBR kind of a thing, are the 4 books that I ended up finishing, so that worked out pretty well. I don't need to add any more book covers here, and I've chosen 3 Tombow dual brush pens to use for my calendar lines here that I thought would look nice with the theme. Turns out they're all very, very similar colours, so I had to do a quick swatch on my sticker sheet here of all of my book covers that I've printed out to use, because immediately after putting down the first line there, I couldn't remember which pen I used at all. So I've had to be a bit creative going over things a second time to really differentiate the colours here, but they do look good with the theme, so all is well. I'm using my Tom Studio Lumos Pro Duo pen for the fine liner, so you can probably work it out just from looking, but the way this calendar works is I highlight from the date that I started up until the date that I finished a book, and then I just write what the book was over the top of that. And if I didn't finish the book on the date that I finally decided to throw in the towel, I'll put a little cross. If I decide to put a book on hold, I'll put a little pause, something like that. And some of them, like Oathbound, go from the previous month, so I actually started reading that one on the 17th of December and didn't finish it until the 18th of January. I didn't plan my placement for this one very well though. I was going to put it on the 2nd row down of these calendars. They're 4.grid spaces tall, each of the calendar boxes, and then I realised I couldn't because I'd already put another book in that space just after that, so had to move it to the bottom very swiftly, but that's okay because I have a white paint marker and I'm not afraid to use it, so I can just correct those couple of lines that I put down to help guide me to begin with, pretend they were never there. I love this white paint marker, but it's kind of starting to give up the ghost a bit, I think. I've had it for a long time, I might just need to give it a clean. Since I don't need to put any more book covers down on this spread, I'm going to move this one for Problematic Summer Romance a little bit lower, so it's in line with the other book covers. It looks kind of nicer. And now let's move on to our first book review page. This one is for Every Summer After by Carley Fortune. I whinge about summer a lot because I live in a place that gets really hot, and it is currently summer for us in the southern hemisphere, but I'm trying to learn to like it. I'm trying to romanticize it a bit, and this is a book I picked up because of that. It's a book that is set in summer, and I actually stumbled across it in the Available Now section of my library app through Libby, and I kind of thought, why not? I'll give it a go. And do you know what? I'm so glad this was the first book I finished in 2026. It was delightful. I've used the Country Azure washi tape from the washi tape shop. It's the one that looks like the sky at the top of the page there. I don't really have anything water themed in my collection at the moment, so this was sort of the best I could do. And I'm using a very bright orangey red Tombow to kind of copy the lettering from the book cover. Not super precisely or anything, it doesn't have to be perfect, but I figured it would be easy because it's this kind of handwriting style. It has some variation in line weight, but it doesn't really stick to the conventions of like modern calligraphy, the thick downstrokes and thin upstrokes. It's kind of a bit all over the place, which makes it look very casual and free, which is a very summery vibe. So I've just done that on some sticker paper, and I'm going to cut it out into a bit of a DIY sticker. Every Summer After is largely set in this lakeside town called Barry's Bay in Ontario, Canada. I've never been there, but it sounds lovely. Our main character is Persephone, but she goes by Percy for short. Funnily enough, that is also what I named my car, Persephone, and I call it Percy for short. Percy is about 10 or 11 years old, I think, when her family buy a lake house in Barry's Bay and then start to spend their summers on the lake, spending time with the family that lives next door, which has 2 young men, Sam and Charlie, and their absolute diva of a single mum. This is a dual timeline story where we're following Percy in her early 30s, I think, coming back to Barry's Bay for the first time in 12 years for a funeral. But we're also flashing back to the childhood and the teenage years that she spent there, all the formative experiences she spent with the boys next door and with her friends from school, all the while knowing that something went terribly wrong and she hasn't spoken to these people in 12 years. But we have no idea what it was that happened. I believe this is Carley Fortune's debut novel, and it hooked me. Particularly all of the moments of these 2 young lovers growing up together, learning about the world together, learning about each other, the intensity of that first love. And the lake might as well be a character in itself. It is such a big part of everything that they do together. They swim in that lake every day, I swear to God. I'm popping a quote down on the page here that I got from this book, and I completely agree with it. This was about Persephone's love of horror novels and how they kind of have a structure that's predictable but comforting, and I feel that way about romance books, so I've included it here. It reads, "Each book was both predictable and unique, comforting and unexpected, safe but never boring." I've also added the book cover down in the bottom corner. I have a video about how I make my book covers for my reading journal. I use sticker paper and a printer at home, and I have a Cricut, so I cut them out with that, but you could skip that step if you wanted. There's a link to that in the description and up in the corner in case you want to see. And I've also popped down a sticker for my Peach rating system. This is how I rate my books, and if you haven't come across the system before, I kind of came up with it. I based it on the core pile system, but sort of not really. I have a video about how it works in case you want to check it out here as well. And if you like the look of the sticker, I have those available as a free download sign-up perk if you sign up for my Substack newsletter, which I haven't updated since August, but it's there if you want it. There's a link to that in the description too. I've added a little bit of other information up the top as well, just things that I like to have tracked for my own information. I read this one on ebook, I got it through the library, it was first published in 2024. I started it on the 6th of January and I finished it on the 14th of January, which means this was the very first book that I finished in 2026. I've given it 4 out of 5 for plot, 5 out of 5 for enjoyment, 4.5 out of 5 for artistry, 4.5 for characters, and 5 out of 5 for heart. That brings us to a total of 23 out of 25, which divided by 5 gives us 4.6. So I'm rating this one 4.6 stars, although I'm rounding it down to 4.5 for my Storygraph rating. And for purposes of coloring in my star rating stamp, it's just easier to do 4.5 than 4.6. I can't be that precise. Before we move on to the next book review page, I want to tell you about something I learned recently thanks to today's video sponsor Skillshare. I know you know I love stickers, and I've been making my own header stickers and book cover stickers for a while now, but sometimes I think it would be cool to make my own stickers from scratch with artwork that I made myself. So one of my 2026 goals is to learn how to use Procreate, the art and design app for iPad. So I took this class on Skillshare. It's called Intro to Procreate, Illustrating on the iPad with Brooke Glazer. And I'd actually taken this class before a few years ago and forgotten quite a bit, so the refresher was really helpful. But Brooke keeps this class updated. So whenever Procreate rolls out new features, you can stay on top of the changes. I love how comprehensive this class is. It really walks you through all of the features, how they work, and how you can adjust them for your preference or project or style. I wasn't feeling super confident about drawing something from scratch, so following Brooke's steps to use an image layer as a reference, I found this excellent 14th century King Arthur illumination, and I adapted it to suit the next book we're going to set up a review page for. And look how well my sticker turned out! Skillshare has creative classes taught by world-class creative pros across illustration, graphic design, entrepreneurial pursuits, and so much more. It's a wonderful place to learn a creative skill or pick up a new hobby, and to learn at your own pace in a way that fits your lifestyle. If you're looking to reconnect with your creativity and maybe avoid scrolling and brain rot, Skillshare is where humans come to learn from other humans. The first 500 people to use my link in the description or scan the QR code will receive a 1-month free trial of Skillshare. Thanks so much to Skillshare for sponsoring this video and helping me make this sticker, which we can use now. Which means it's time to set up my review page for Oathbound by Tracy Deonn. This is the 3rd book in the Legendborn cycle series. We actually read the first one, which is called Legendborn, for a Page Majors read back in August last year, and it was a bit divisive, but I was one of the people who really liked it, so I've been continuing on with the series. I'm decorating with 3 washi tapes from the Quirky Cup Collective. and also a PET tape from the Serpents and Swords collection as well. If you read a lot of fantasy and you keep a DIY reading journal, I really could not recommend the Quirky Cup Collective stuff enough. They are really catering to the fantasy girlies at the moment. It's always hard to talk about a book that is later on in a series because you don't want to give away spoilers for the earlier books, but for a bit of general background for the world of these stories, set in the US, it's YA. It's a little bit like Sabrina the Teenage Witch if Sabrina had been a really resourceful black girl, and it's really deeply rooted in several kind of magic systems, but one of them is the Knights of the Round Table and King Arthur, which is why I made that sticker after a King Arthur kind of piece of art from history. It took me a while to get through this one. I was listening to the audiobook. It was about 25 hours long. I actually started it in mid-December, so it took me basically a full month to get this one ticked off the list. And so much happens in this book. It also surprised me because we very suddenly had perspectives from characters we hadn't heard from before who I really didn't expect to get a voice in the story, which was really interesting. I know from some TikToks I've seen that audiobook narrators don't always know the scope of the role they're taking on when they accept it, like as far as accents and things like that. And there were a couple of cases here where actors had to do a really big range of voices and some of them didn't always completely pay off. Like there were a couple of cases of what I believe to be a pretty bad Scottish accent in this story, but it was still a good time. I had fun. Something I wanted to mention with regard to my little knight sticker that I made, there are some vines behind the knight that are in 3 different colours. They were just red in the original illustration, but I changed the colours to reflect when people are messing around with magic in this story, they can cast some flames, kind of, I guess, that represent, it's like a Kamehameha, you know, and the flames are different colours depending on the kind of magic they're using, so I tried to represent that in the 3 colours on the little guy, but you can't super tell from here, but one of them is purple, one's red, one's blue. And I deliberately left the knight without a face because there are many surprises in this story, and so that could be anyone. It can be whoever you want. Anyone who's read the books knows exactly who it would be, but, you know, that's for us to know and you to find out if you read it. I probably should have mentioned this earlier, but just in case you are new to my reading journal videos, I'll never give you spoilers in the voiceover, but if you read the text that I'm writing on my review spreads, there will be spoilers in there, so proceed with caution. I believe this was originally supposed to be a trilogy, but it's been expanded into 4 books, and given how much happened in this one, I can't imagine how they could have wrapped it up in 3 books, so I'm interested to see what happens in the next one. I hope it's not longer, though. That is a trend, isn't it, with fantasy book series, that they get longer as they go. I don't want it to be longer. I'm not that into really, really long books. I can't concentrate on one thing for that long. Even when I'm reading a series, I break them up, I put other books in between. I don't like to go straight into the next book in a series, so maybe that's got something to do with it. I don't know. I gave it 3.8. Definitely a fun time. There are some fun, almost like heisty moments in this one, which I really enjoyed, but I haven't thought about it much since I put it down. Going to add my star rating to my January Reads dashboard, and then we'll move on to the next book review. This was another one of my let's romanticize the summer kind of moments. This one is for Problematic Summer Romance by Ali Hazelwood. And it was also just conveniently available on audiobook when I was scrolling through the Available Now section of the Libby app, which of course will likely be different for you. I'm hooked up to 4 libraries through Libby, but your mileage may vary depending on the libraries that you have access to. This one's one of those holiday romance kind of stories that takes place in a destination, which is actually really fun because it takes place in Sicily, in Italy, and Ali Hazelwood is Italian. I was so shocked the first time I heard her speak in an interview and was like, whoa, wait, what's the accent? Because I just assumed she was, like her characters, a young American woman. She's not, she's Italian. And so through this book, she's kind of showing us her favourite part of Italy, and I think that's really lovely. I enjoy everything Ali Hazelwood throws out into the world, whether it is one of her formulaic STEMinist novels or not, with the exception of one of her stories, Not in Love, which funnily enough is the interconnected standalone prequel to this one. I don't know what was going on with Not in Love, if it was just not the right time for me to be reading it, but I DNF'd it. This one I did finish and I did enjoy, but I had a big problem with the male narrator in the audiobook. He was very bad at his job. Don't you love when your cat comes crawling over your journal when you've just put down really, really wet paint marker? Thanks, Mitsu. This one sees an extended friend group going to Italy for a destination wedding, and it gets a little bit uncomfortable for our main character Maya because she is in love with her brother's best friend. Best man at the wedding, his name is Connor, lots of people call him Hark, and he is like 15 years older than her. Hence the problematic in the title. So Maya's like 23, Hark is like 36, 37, which is my age, and I personally can't imagine dating someone 23 at my age. But I'm not usually into the age gap romance, but this one was kind of fun. It was duet narrated, so every time there was a male character speaking a line, the male narrator did the line. But I don't understand why we did that because it was a single point of view story, so we didn't need a second narrator. I would have preferred the lady continue to do the men's voices for this one because the guy just did such a terrible job. He sounded so constipated, honestly. Like he was speaking on a monotone all the time, one note, very flat, very like forced gravelly. It really pulled me out, and every time he would pop up out of nowhere, because it wasn't like he had his own chapters and you'd expect it, I was like, what are you doing here? Go away. Can't you just let her do it? I would rather hear her do your lines, mate. Please get out. Because the female narrator was fantastic, so it really did kind of ruin the experience. As much as I am trying to romanticize summer, I don't have a lot of summery kind of feeling stickers and washi tapes in my collection, so I pulled this one out. I had kind of been saving it for a holiday that I've got coming up later this year, but I was like, this is more appropriate. I'm honestly not much of a beach girl, so let's use the entire sticker sheet here. This sticker sheet is from Moonbow Creative, which is an Aussie sticker company, and I've just layered it up with some blue and green washi tape because that kind of matches the cover. The extremely sparkly paint marker that I used for the header is from Grabby from their advent calendar. And on the whole, it's not like the most cohesive book review page that I've ever set up, but it does the job, and I do feel like it kind of communicates the story quite well. It feels like it fits with Maya. She wore a lot of swimwear and sunglasses in this book, so had a fun time, but not my favorite. 3.7 stars for me for this one, so I'm just going to check that this ink isn't still wet before I turn back and add that star rating back here as well. Only one book left to set up a review spread for this month, and this was our Page Majors read for January. I wish I had started it sooner. I finished it on the very last day of January, just before our scheduled meeting, which then I was actually unfortunately too unwell to run, so we haven't got to have that yet. If you read this book and you want to talk about it and you're not in the Discord, get in there so we can have a chat in the next day or two. The book is Empire of Shadows by Jacquelyn Benson. Big shout out to Rachel for suggesting this one for us for the Page Majors. I've had this piece of washi sheet with the map on it sitting around in my collection for such a long time. It's from a booklet of washi sheets from American Crafts. I got it at Spotlight in store here in Australia. I don't know if you could get it anymore, sorry about that. But this map has the most wonderful kind of vintage look to it, which is great because this is a historical fantasy romance, I guess. And a good deal of the story takes place in British Honduras, now known as Belize. And that area of Central America is indeed on this map, so that just was too perfect. Also, it looks great with the book cover, I think. So I'll keep the other half of a map for a potential future travel journal. I am still adjusting to moving into this B5 size notebook. This is my first time really setting up spreads in it for book reviews since my previous journal, and I totally forgot that I used to prefer a double page spread for my Page Majors books because I need space to write down all of our discussion questions for when we talk about the book in our little digital Discord meetup. I could have probably added a tip in or something here. I didn't think about that until just now, but I'm just going to answer the questions and number them rather than writing the questions in for myself this time. But I'll remember next month 2 pages. And this girlie from Paper Monogatari I'd been holding on to for a while. I'd been planning to use her for Where the Library Hides by Isabel Ibanez, and I just forgot, but I think she suits Ellie from this book quite well too, so I'm going to put her here. She's an adventurer and a scholar. If you like adventure books with archaeology and mythology and romance woven in, you might really enjoy this one. It has proven to be quite divisive for the Page Majors though, I will say that. It's 1898 and our main character Ellie is a suffragist and she's really struggling with the world not allowing her to pursue her dreams. She really wants to go and study history and archaeology, but she's kind of relegated to secretary tasks because she dared to be born a woman. And one day she stumbles across an artifact at her workplace that she knows is so much more than it seems, and she chases it down to British Honduras, and some bad guys who also know what it means also chase her down to British Honduras. I've seen many people draw comparisons to The Mummy, and it does kind of have that vibe a little bit, I think. Just to warn you, Ellie is quite naive and makes some really interesting choices a few times. I think that was the main barrier to enjoyment for some of my Page Majors. I personally had a pretty good time with this one though. I'm pretty easy to please, if I'm being super honest. There is a little part of my soul that wishes I'd done this one on audiobook because I didn't know how to approach quite a few of the languages and place names and item names and character names in this one, but I'm still in my favouring ebook over audiobook phase at the moment, so that is where my heart led me. I actually gave this one 3.5 for each of the categories of the Peach rating system, so its overall rating is also 3.5 stars. I'm not super certain if I want to continue the series with this one or not, so we'll have to wait and see if I keep thinking about it into the future. Let's go back and put the star rating on my January dashboard, and then we're going to go all the way back to that list of all of the books I've read this year so far, even though it's still only 4 books at this stage, because that also has star ratings on it. And now that I have all the information, I want to copy that onto here as well. This is potentially a little redundant, but I wanted to try it out. I wanted to see what it felt like to have the star ratings on this overall all the books kind of spread as well, just because I think it kind of looks cool, to be honest, and also maybe it will be fascinating further down the track. I don't know yet. I like to have our Page Majors books picked 6 weeks ahead of the month that they are for, so that our members have time to source the book, especially if they are people who rely on the library like me. So our March book is going to be Circe by Madeline Miller. And I can already colour in 2 of my book bingo squares. This one is for contemporary romance, which I'm going with Every Summer After, although I'm writing this in the wrong space. I'm putting it in number 1. It was supposed to be number 3. Oh well, I didn't even realise until I was editing, so I'll have to fix that somehow later. Maybe I'll just change the numbers on the list. And historical fiction, I'm filling in with Empire of Shadows. Overleaf, I have a page for my book of the month, so whatever my top rated book was of the month will go here. That's going to Every Summer After by Carley Fortune. And then right at the end of my yearly setup pages, I have the Year of Goober bookshelf and prompt list. This is the year-long reading challenge hosted by Goobers Who Read, and I printed off a teeny tiny Empire of Shadows book cover to go on the bookshelf. That one is going for the prompt, first book in a series. Now that January is just about all sorted out, I can move on to setting up my February tracking spreads. For now, I'm going to continue with the Dutch door setup because that did work pretty well for me in January, so I'm going to bring it forward into February too. I know some people absolutely hate the idea of cutting paper out of your journal, but I do find it helps for pages like this to make your decorations stretch a little bit further, and I like these 3 pages to just feel like a very cohesive theme. If you want to find out more about how to make your own waterfall tabs, I have a video about it that you can check out right here or in the description in a link. You're essentially starting by cutting away a decent chunk of the first page and then cutting away less and less as you move through however many pages you need to set up. I'm only going to cut away paper from 2 pages because they're going to be big chunky waterfall tabs here. I usually like to line the edges of my pages for waterfall tabs with washi tape, but I didn't really have any that would work with the theme. We'll talk a bit more about the theme in a second because that's a story all of its own. But I did have this sheet of vinyl. This is this pink kind of iridescent vinyl. I have it upside down right now so I can do the measurements. I've had it for years. I've used it in at least 2 bullet journal setups on my channel in the past, and this was the very last sheet, so it's great to finally use it up. But I have to cut it down to the size of my tabs so that it will fill up the amount of space that I want it to, hence why I'm measuring things and marking things and using this handy little straight edge cutting thing from JOURNALSAY to cut them to the perfect size. I forgot myself for a second then and rounded the corners of both sides, even though I knew this was not going to reach all the way to the bottom of the page, but that's okay, we can still work with it. The iridescence on this is so fun. It's like a green reflection, but also in the right light, it's like a yellow reflection. It's really fun. My plan had been to cut the section to fit on the bottom to perfectly fit in the space, but I'm actually going to overlap it a bit so that the corner that I cut out of the previous piece gets covered up as well. Didn't mean to do that. It will increase the saturation there just a touch too, but it's okay. I don't think I care. Big shout out to my partner Chris, who helped me come up with the theme for this month because I was completely out of ideas. I actually just took him into my office and directed him towards my washi tape drawers and asked him to pick one, and I would build the theme around that. I never expected him to choose this one though. This PET tape has kind of a circuit board pattern on it. I've had it for ages. It's from JOURNALSAY. They still have it, which is great. And that's the one he chose. So we're building this kind of cyberpunk sci-fi theme. And I don't think I ever would have come up with this on my own. So thanks for this, Chris, because I really like how it turns out. Fair warning, if you like the look of this circuit board PET tape, you don't get a great deal on the roll. You'll probably want to be a little bit sparing with it. I actually used almost the entire thing just across these 3 spreads, so If you wanted to use it for an entire theme throughout a journal or something like that, you might want to grab a couple of rolls. It's not very expensive, so that's always helpful. This theme is going to have a lot more negative space in it than what I usually do. It just felt like the right time to do something a little bit cleaner. I also thought it would be fun to add in some of these moons. These are also a PET tape from JOURNALSAY. I wish they were pre-cut, but they're not, so I have to do it myself. And I'm deliberately cherry picking the ones that have a touch of pink in them, or quite a bit of pink like this one, which is all the more reason to wish they were pre-cut, because now I just have these offcuts of this tape kicking around so that I could get to these. It's a bit inconvenient, but we do what we must for the theme. Of course, I also made myself some stickers with my Cricut, and I printed this one out just to act as a little extra offset for the cover spread. I literally just searched alien symbol and this came up in the free Cricut assets, so I was like, yep, that one will do very nicely, thank you. I grew up watching the TV series Roswell and I loved it, so this feels a little bit like their sigils, although theirs were much more swirly. And I had a lot of trouble deciding on where to put these moons, but I've ended up just stacking them along the right side in the gaps. Of course, I also DIY'd some header stickers for this theme. I just about always do that because if I'm making book cover stickers and I've got page space left over, I might as well use it up with some more header stickers. Naturally, I went searching for fonts online that suit the kind of sci-fi vibe. I also went to see Starship Troopers in the movies last week, so this felt like really good timing, I don't know. But the font I landed on is called Acquire, but it's spelled without the C, it's just AQUIRE. I won't lie, I was partially drawn to that one because it's a word that I learned because of reading the Animorphs books when I was a kid. They have to acquire the DNA of the animals that they shift into by touching them. Wow, the stuff that stays with you from childhood, right? And I'm just filling in the gaps at the top and bottom of the spread, trying not to get things stuck to this washi tape, which I don't know if you could really call it washi tape. It's definitely more of a vinyl kind of a texture. These ones I think must be from BGM. I got them from Books Kinokuniya in Sydney. The silver one actually reminds me of the music video for Polyester Girl by Regurgitator, which if you didn't grow up with Australian music in the late 90s will mean nothing to you, but you should look it up anyway because it's great. The next spread I'm dedicating to my reading stats for the month, which I've actually forgotten to do for January. Don't worry, we'll do it after this. Ordinarily, I would have done it already by now, but I was not firing on all cylinders when I set this up. I get all of my reading stats from an app called Storygraph, which I have my own Storygraph profile linked in the description if you want to be friends over there. I believe it's pretty similar to Goodreads and Fable. I just really like the stats that this one spits out for you at the end of every month. It's like getting your Spotify Wrapped 12 times a year. It's so much fun. And it's free, which is always a good thing. So I have literally based my reading stats around what it spits out for me at the end of every month, so I can just copy that information down really easily. We've got books completed, pages read, time listened, average rating, and I like to put the star rating there so I can also color it in. Average time to finish, so how long it's taking me to read books in that month. Sometimes it's interesting to see if there are trends on those from one year to the next. I actually made the sticker a bit too long for that one, so I just chopped it to make it fit in the space. And those are all the stats I wanted to track on the left side. This is the same setup as my January one that we'll go back to in a moment. So I'm just going to put some of my circuit board down the bottom to fill in that extra space. Then on the right side at the top, I'm going to have the book cover for my standout book of the month. I do also have that on its own page earlier in the journal though, so that might be redundant. I'm not sure if I'll retire that, but I kind of need it to take up the page space, you know what I mean? And then I've made these stickers. I'm testing out some sticker sheets that I'm hoping to make available as purchasable, downloadable, printable sticker sheets for you in the future based off how I do my reading stats pages. So I'm trialing some of those at the moment. These are the pie chart stickers from that. And the pie charts I like to track are format, library or not library, and fiction versus non-fiction. And then I'll have a little list of all of the genres that I read within in that month as well. And the last spread, I like to make my dashboard, my progress calendar, and all of the books that I read in the month. I strategically make this the last of the waterfall tab spreads because this one has the most page space still available. And you know how this one works because you watched me use it already for January. So basically calendar at the top, book covers down the bottom. This one will have a little bit more space for book covers, but there are also less days in February. So who knows whether I'll actually read more or less than I did in January. If you ever find you're working with a PET tape or a washi tape that's too wide for the space you want to use it in, you can just cut it in half. I love doing this, and it works really well with this kind of repeating pattern, sort of abstract looking tape. You can really get away with a lot with this kind of thing. It's very forgiving. And when you don't have very much of the tape, it helps it stretch a bit further too, which is always welcome. While we put the finishing touches on this spread, let's have a quick chat about the books that I'm aiming to read in February. I've already started 2 of them, so I can talk to you about those ones because I'm fairly confident I'll finish both of them. One is a contemporary romance. It's called Some Kind of Famous by Ava Wilder. I got this in a book box. I've started it. It's okay so far. Hemlock and Silver by T. Kingfisher is our Page Majors read, so I will definitely be reading that one. I've started the audiobook. I want to revisit Forging Silver into Stars by Bridget Kemmerer because I want to read the next book in the series, and the 3rd one has just come out, so that's kind of what prompted it. And after that, nobody knows, including me. Now let's get my January reading stats all filled out here. I finished 4 books in January, reading a total of 764 pages, listening to 35.28 hours of audiobook. My average rating for the month was 3.88, and on average it took me 17 days to finish a book. I've grabbed out some different brown and beige markers to earlier since I didn't feel like there was enough colour variation in those, so one is still one of the Tombos, but then I've grabbed an Archer and Olive Calligraph, which is actually really running out on the thicker end unfortunately, and also a Pentel brush sign pen, and I'm using these ones to fill out my pie charts. So for format, it was a 50-50 split this month. I did 50% audiobook with 2 of them and 50% ebook with 2 of them. I don't read a lot of nonfiction, so most of the time the fiction-nonfiction pie chart looks like this, which is 100% fiction, and I am a-okay with that. And I am incredibly proud to report that 100% of the books I read in January I sourced through the library. I did not pay for a single one of them, and I love that too. My January reading covered the genres of romance, fantasy, contemporary, young adult, and historical, so nothing especially groundbreaking for me there, but I do think it's a nice way to ease into the year with things you already like. And I'm adding the book cover for Every Summer After as my standout book. So now let's have a flip through all of it from start to finish. And now that you know all about my January reading, I want to hear about yours. What was your standout book? What was something you didn't enjoy so much? Did you DNF anything? Let's have a chat about it down in the comments because I get so many wonderful book recommendations from you in the comments, and I write them down in this very journal in my maybe next list, so keep them coming. I hope you get to go on some wonderful adventures in the books you choose for February. And I hope you enjoyed my February theme too, because it's very different to my usual style, so I'm interested to hear what you think of it. And just in case you're really keen to keep talking books with me, here is a link to a playlist of all of my reading journal videos from last year. And right under that is a link to a video that YouTube thinks you might enjoy.